Good morning, Patriots. How are you doing today? This is Mike the Patriot coming to you live from the downtown metropolis of LaMonte, Missouri. It's 22 degrees outside here in central Missouri. Hope you're having a great day wherever you are at. And if you're from South Florida, I don't want to hear it. Just saying. or Southern California. But if you're in Southern California, you got to put up with the libtards. You know, California is a cereal state, right? Fruits, nuts, and flakes. Anyways, if you're from there, you know. I mean, look at your governor. Did you see him playing basketball with the kids yesterday? Giving that one kid a spanking? I'm sure that looked well. Anyways, I hope you guys are having a great day as you log on. Make sure you go to the description section of the show, wherever you're watching it. Follow the links to the other social medias and also to the bio cell and purchase yourself some. But to the other social medias and sign up and like and follow and all that stuff. Make sure you hit the thumbs up. Make sure you comment and share and tag and all that stuff, whatever you do. Whatever reaction you want to give on Facebook is fine. Facebook is massively suppressing me right now. It's ridiculous, the number of people that are not watching that normally watch. I don't know what the deal is. Maybe I smell bad or something. I don't know. Rumble's not, though. Rumble's cooking along just like it normally does, so that's fine. And YouTube, who cares? There's 4 of you over there. There's 188 up 200 people watching on Rumble as we speak. So, yeah. Anyways, you know, Facebook, it totally messes with everything. They don't allow anything to work properly. Part of that is they don't want you getting any funding. You would think that they would want eyeballs. They would want to draw all the folks over on Rumble on the Facebook. You know, 3,000 people are going to watch me over on Rumble. And they would want to draw that over to their, you know, keep the eyeballs on their commercials and their ads and their stream and all the stuff, but they don't care. They don't care. Yeah, smell-o-vision. So as you're logging in, say hi, where you're watching from. I see you from all over the place. Boy, my Rumble's acting up weird. All right, here we go. Let's see. We got checking in from Georgia, from Chicago, from Kentucky, Indiana. We got Florida checking in, Salt Lake City checking in, Alabama checking in. Good old Sedalia, Missouri. You know, Sedalia, Missouri is the home of Scott Joplin. They celebrate him every year with the Scott Joplin Festival. He's the creator of ragtime music. Of course, back then they ran him out of town on a rail because of playing that devil music. But, you know, we celebrate him now. It's all good now. He's been dead for 100 years. Ohio's checking in. Texas is checking in. Mississippi's checking in. We got another Missouri checking in. Nebraska, Indiana, coming in from all over the place. Another Nebraska, another Ohio. Chattanooga, Tennessee. Maine is checking in. Minnesota. Pink, Oklahoma. Another Missouri. Washington checking in. Facebook is suppression. Well, depression. Anyways, North Carolina's checking in. Confused, Arkansas. Arkansas's checking in. Flintstone, Georgia. Have a yabba dabba do time. Louisiana checking in. Ohio checking in. Texas. Oh, what else do we got here? Florida. You guys are coming in from all over the place. Oklahoma's checking in. Canada. Got folks from the north checking in. The other day we had somebody from Brazil who logged in. That's pretty cool. I haven't seen him today, but that's pretty awesome. You know, when Facebook's not suppressing, you know, you got to do what you got to do. But people are coming in, checking in from all over the place, and I appreciate, especially you folks out there on the West Coast where it's dark 30 in the morning. Danbury, Connecticut, and Manhattan, Kansas. Of course, North Kakalaka, you can't forget them. If you don't know what that is, that's North Carolina. I told you all the story. If you don't know, you don't know. So we're going to get started here with the show today. I didn't have it queued up when I wanted to play. Duh. I forgot about it. So let me get it queued up and we're going to start. We're going to start today with a little ditty from Marjorie Taylor Greene. And it goes a little something like this. Maybe if I can add it to the screen. There we go.
Biden family, They took some cash from China, then smoked crack with a miner. Joe's memories declining, the Biden family. Old Hunter is a sleazebag, took bribes from Chairman Xi. Shot movies of his wiener, the Biden family. Burisma, China. The Biden family.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen, the Biden family. We all know how wonderful and goofy and zany they are. I mean, they can be their own Kardashian show. And not to be outdone, yesterday was Halloweeny. I don't participate, but some people do. And here's the best costume so far.
Mr. President, please. It's one step, Mr. President. Yes, good job, Mr. President. Yes, right here. No, this way, right here.
Not only did he have the mask and the suit, but he couldn't get up the stairs. Great performance of Joe Biden. Just got to say, excellent. Before we get started with that, I want to jump over here and talk about this. This is from Mother Jones. If y'all are worried about Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, this article from October 31st, 2023, from Mother Jones. You shall know a man by his enemies. Shall make you feel, well, much happier with this decision. Let me just bring it to you. Scoop, Mike Johnson urged religious test for politics. Dum, dum, dum. Now, this article is written in a negative light. Keep that in mind. The elevation of Representative Mike Johnson, Republican Louisiana, to Speaker of the House was a shocker. Not since John McCain picked Sarah Palin to be his running mate has a heretofore little-known politician been lifted so quickly to a position of prominence and importance. Though Johnson now is the second in line in presidential succession, we are still finding out basic and important facts about him and how he sees the world. This includes an alarming record as a hardcore conservative cultural warrior motivated by Christian fundamentalism beliefs, who has fiercely opposed gay rights, comparing homosexuality to pedophilia, called for a total nationwide ban on abortion, proposed the end of no-fault divorce, and urged a return to 18th century values. One more significant thing I've discovered is that Johnson appears to believe in religious limit tests for politicians. That's right. This weekend, I broke the news that Johnson and his wife, Kelly Johnson, a self-described Christian counselor, a few years ago, created a seminar that promoted the premise that the United States has been a Christian nation. I found a video of one of these sessions held in 2019 at a Baptist church. Can you believe a Baptist church? And they belong to in Bossier City, Louisiana. At that event, from the pulpit, Kelly declared biblical Christianity, that is, a literal reading of the Bible as a fundamentalist interprets it, is the only valid worldview. And nothing else makes sense. This worldview includes creationism, believing that in the ridiculous theory that the earth was created by God in 6 days, 6,000 years ago, and the denial of evolution. Mike Johnson called for biblical sanctioned government. In his view, and many others, including a podcast they have hosted together, the pair have contended that there's only one truth, Jesus' truth. Can you believe it? The Johnsons are die-hard fundamentalists who believe every every religion other than their brand of Christianity is false, and that whatever is written in the Bible should dictate all conduct, rules, policies, and laws. As I reported earlier, Mike Johnson in 2016 exclaimed, "We're living in a completely amoral society. The only way out, according to him and Kelly, is to abide by the Bible." This is a lot to absorb. We're often uncomfortable discussing a politician's faith unless it's Joe Biden or Bill Clinton, who were great Catholic Christians. But in this case, Johnson acknowledges that fundamentalism determines his politics and policy positions. As he said during a Fox interview, "I'm a Bible-believing Christian." Probably clings to his gun, too. Someone asked me today in the media, they said, "It's curious. People are curious. What does Mike Johnson think about any issue under the sun?" I said, "Well, go pick up the Bible off the shelf and read it. That's my worldview." Whew. Scary. After reporting the story on the seminars he and his wife conducted, I went back and watched the video again and found another important nugget that I'm sharing here for the very first time. Towards the end of the 3-hour-long presentation, which, if I had any inclination from the Holy Spirit, would have convicted me, but since I don't, because the demons are too strong, Johnson instructed the assembly on how they ought to apply their religious beliefs to politics. Can you believe it? You better sit down any candidate who says they're running for legislature and say, "I want to know what your worldview is. I want to know what you think about Christian heritage of this country. I want to know what you think about God's design for society." Have you ever thought about that? If they hadn't thought about it, you need to move on and find somebody who has. We have too many in government who don't know any of this stuff. They haven't been taught about it. This remark came after Kelly and Mike had repeatedly asserted that the Christian fundamentalist worldview, based entirely on what appears in the Old and New Testaments, is the only legitimate worldview. Johnson was telling the folks in the pews that the only political candidates deserving support are those who share this worldview and who embrace the notion that the United States has been a Christian nation. This smacks of Christian nationalism. Oh my gosh, he's probably a terrorist, and appears to be a religious test for politics. Johnson, of course, is free to follow his values. Back politicians who are fundamentalist Christians and press others to do the same, believing that only people who follow his take on Christianity are worthy of holding elected office. But doing so demonstrates a narrow, rigid view of life and suggests that he yearns for a theocracy, a government run by Christian fundamentalists who, based on their decisions on what they consider to be absolute truth of the Bible. A good example of how Johnson's faith affects his approach to public prophecy occurred earlier this summer when he discussed climate change. We're all going to die. He asserted that the demand for action to address climate crisis defies the created order of how this is all supposed to work. He explained that the Bible presents an order to life. There's God, beneath God is man, and below that is the animals. Humans are to follow God's command to take dominion of the earth. You subdue it. We're supposed to eat those animals. Eat the animals? Don't you know they're suffering? He doesn't like abortion either. Johnson noted that environmentalists ignored God's word and compared them to the devil. When you take God out of the equation, you remove absolute truths. You've got to make all this stuff up. So what they've done is as the devil always does, they take truth and turn it upside down. It's almost as if they took truth and turned it into a lie. So the radical environmentalists, they actually believe the environment is God. Well, it is. Johnson adheres to the harsh perspective. The only truth is what he preaches. The only true religion is what he practices. The only guide to the problem of modern society is the Bible. Environmentalists are akin to Satan. Johnson does come across as a mild-mannered fellow. Indeed, during his seminar, he told his co-religionists that they need to promote their truth in a Christ-like fashion with loving and kindness, and that they must avoid bitterness and anger. Do not be quarrelsome, he advised. Don't try to silence or censor others. No, that's for us to do, us, the left, to decide. We decide who gets silenced and censored. That's right, Christians. Let the critics and foes have their say, for ultimately nothing can defeat the one and only truth that Johnson and his comrades in Christ hold. Comrades. We don't consider ourselves Christians, comrades. I'm just adding from my personal, not reading in his voice. Johnson's amiable persona is a cover for his extremism. He sees himself as part of a small band of religious Christian soldiers combating an immoral society. His wife's business is called Onward Christian Counseling Services. Sounds like terrorists to me. After he became speaker, he took down its website. For Johnson, this is truly a war for the soul of the nation. Unlike Joe Biden, who understands the soul of the nation. With a Bible in his hands, he and a small slice of Americans are up against dark and satanic forces. Still, Johnson is a happy warrior, I'll bet, and a tolerant one, who believes that only he and his fellow faith keepers possess the truth and deserve access to power. He cannot accept the religious culture's diversity of the nation and the world. He is much better suited to be a preacher than a leader who just 2 heartbeats away from the presidency. And in my next article, I will talk about Sheep to Lead and her honorable, loving, compassion, justice warrior fight for the downtrodden Palestinians in Georgia. From the river to the sea, Palestine must be free. Yes, that is Mother Jones' take on Mike Johnson. Makes me feel really, really good about the guy. Because, yeah, he holds to his own truth and his religious truth. No, sir, no. He doesn't hold to his own truth. He holds to the truth that is Jesus Christ. And let me tell you something, Mother Jones. You shall know the truth, and the truth will set you free. You should try it. You should blow the dust off that Bible, crack it open, and read it. Like I said, you will know a man by his enemies. When I read that, I'm like, I like Mike Johnson even the more. Thank you. The only thing that would make it better if he comes out with an AR-15. I mean, that would just be perfect. His Bible and an AR-15. What more could you ask for in a Speaker of the House? Potentially 2 breaths, 2 heartbeats away from the presidency. I will have a man and a woman after my own heart in the White House. Anyways, that's Kim Clement prophecy. Just I don't know. Just throwing that out there. Just it is what it is. Anyways, now let's talk about the economy. The stock market's up $34. Dow Jones Industrial Average. NASDAQ, $69 up. SP 500 is $15 up. Gold is down to $19.92. They smushed gold down, smushed it down. And there's a reason for that they smushed the gold down. Gold was down to 1981 yesterday. They short sell. They manipulated. They couldn't have the gold above 2,000 at the end of the month. They couldn't have that going into the next month. So they mushed it down, whatever it takes. But when you're printing money like there's no tomorrow, you could throw money away like that. It's no problem. You know, kind of like this. Trillions of worthless paper money printed by central banks, money laundering, using fine art by tax avoiding bankers. So they're throwing money into fine art to launder the money to avoid paying taxes on it. Remember Hunter Biden making art? Yeah. Explain why this painting's worth $137.5 million. Modern art is trash. I'm just going to tell you that. I generally look at art and I think to myself, if I can do it, it's not art. And I could draw that or paint that or whatever. I mean, I could slop some pictures and draw some stick figures as good as the next. But why are they money laundering like this? Well, they're hiding money that they're getting so they don't have to pay taxes, and they're manipulating and throwing money all around. And modern art is one of the ways, or fine art is one of the ways that they do it. You know, they print. It says, you use it to buy your groceries. You get your salary in it. You might even think you can retire on your savings. You're wrong. Dead wrong. They print. Coming to a theater near you. A take on an old movie. They live. Here's another one. This is interesting. It says that Japan on standby to deal with one-sided yen moves. Top FX diplomat. Now, what are they talking about there? Let's see if I still got that story up, or did I dump it by accident? No, here it is. No, that's not it. This one. Here's the story. Japan says that it's on standby to deal with one-sided currency moves as yen tumbles. I told you this is going to start in the smaller countries, and then it's going to spread here. Japan's top currency diplomat, I'm going to try, Kinda is his name. Mastedo Kinda said on Wednesday, did he kinda say, or is his last name Kinda? I don't know. Authorities were on standby to respond to recent one-sided sharp moves in the yen, meaning the yen's about to collapse, escalating his warning against speculators as the currency tumbled below a critical level. Markets have been on alert in recent months for possible yen buying intervention by Japan authorities, who, under pressure to combat a sustained depreciation of the currency. Depreciation of a currency means inflation, it's just another way of saying it, as it pushes up import prices and households' cost of living. The yen is collapsing. It's going to happen. It's going to happen from all over as these countries start to feel the pain of American money printing. And then just to remind y'all, as we go through life and we hear all about global warming and, you know, we're the ice caps are going to melt and the water sea levels are going to rise and we're all going to die. And then people like Joe Biden and Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton and AOC and Mitt Romney all buy these multi-million-dollar homes on the coasts. Evidently, they don't believe the sea is going to rise too much. But anyways, I digress. Just remember that this is an old song and dance. 1983.
The Reagan administration has proposed making airbags or automatic seatbelts mandatory for new cars. Critics urged immediate action. And finally, a federal report today predicted possible catastrophic warming of the Earth by the 1990s with a strong climate change. I'm Jessica Savage in New York. More news later on this NBC station. The Reagan administration has proposed making airbags or automatic seatbelts mandatory.
So there you have it. You could blame the Reagan administration for your airbags and automatic seatbelts. The automatic seatbelt thing didn't work out because they sucked. You remember those when you opened the car door and it went zzz like this? And then the motor went out and it got stuck halfway. You remember that? So you just unhooked the stupid thing anyways. You remember that? I remember those. On your old Chevy Corsicas and your old Escorts. Now this was 1983 NBC News. And we're all going to die by 1990 because of global climate change. We're all going to die. The truth is, that reporter, it was true for her because she died in a car accident like a year later. So, anyways, I was reading that in the comments. So she didn't make it to 1990, but the rest of us did. 1983, I was 12 years old. Yeah. We're all going to die from the greenhouse effect. Got to get rid of your hairspray and your R12 refrigerant because the politicians had invested in the newer stuff. By the way, you know they're changing refrigerant again, not because of the ozone layer, because of CO2 or something. Yeah. Anyways, moving right along. By the way, the politicians all invest in the newest, whatever the newest refrigerant is. They've done it 3 times now. Then they get rich, and you have to change all your refrigerant and everything, and you can't get your refrigerant for the old stuff. Drives up the price. It's a wonderful situation. We gotta love our economy. You know, it's kind of like this. How to spot disinformation on social media. This is Israel-Gaza war, BBC America. How to spot, or BBC UK, how to spot disinformation on social media. And this person helps out. He draws the circles just to point out how you know when it's disinformation, right? Miss, or malinformation. Just remember that. And then there's this one. Just think about this for a second. The Biden administration has been wanting to introduce a unrealized capital gains tax. Now, what does that mean? Ginger asks, does anybody dare knock on my door for trick or treat? No, I turned all the lights off, and just sat in the dark and staring at my phone. I wasn't worried about it. They don't come to my house. Actually, I wasn't there for most of the time, but that's okay. So if they came and knocked, I wasn't there. I'm the new guy in the neighborhood anyway, so nobody really knows me, which is fine. But there was lots of people out running around, though. Anyways, unrealized capital. That means you haven't sold your house, but your house appreciated. They want to tax the appreciation. It's kind of going to work like this. It's kind of going to work like this right here. It says stocks worth $100. Print money, a lot of money. Stocks are now worth $200. Tax the unrealized gain of the $100. Rinse and repeat. And then Sparky says, well, your house is worth $200,000. Print a lot of money. Your house is now worth $400,000. Tax the unrealized gain of $200,000. You don't have that kind of cash. BlackRock buys your house at the auction. I'm telling you, inflation is a tax on people that don't have any money, because look, like I said to the old man at Walmart the other day, the only people getting a better deal off of the prices of the groceries is the tax man, because whatever the percentage of your sales tax is where you live, the percentage times more is more. Our local municipalities are all announcing that they have increased revenue. Yay! You know, the city of Sedalia is finding little old ladies who can't repaint their house because they're on a fixed income and they don't have the budget to do it. They're condemning their houses and kicking them out on the streets, bulldozing their houses, and then letting the grass grow real high and screaming and hollering that the town looks like crap. I don't live in the town anymore, so they can't hurt me. All the while, you have streets like North Grand with potholes that little Chinamen are sticking their heads up out of. You know, if you don't want your town to look like a podunk country town, put some curbs and sidewalks in. Just saying. Anyways, moving on. Government at its finest. Here's an interesting story. Remember yesterday I talked about how Joe Biden, how his son was invested in a Chinese company that has all of the mining capacity for rare metals, and that rare metal prices are getting ready to skyrocket. Well, how about this? New Chinese parent of a U.S. battery maker has business ties with a blacklisted CCC paramilitary group. Gotten High-Tech employs 923 CCP members, launched a joint venture company with a communist Chinese military company subsidiary in 2016. Let me explain something to you. China is a communist country. Any business in China is owned by the government and is connected to the military. Doesn't matter the business. It's a Chinese companies are communist country. Communism owns all of it. There are no private companies in China. If you're doing business with a company out of China, you're doing a business with a government-owned communist business. Oh, sure, they set up corporations and they put CEOs, but the CEOs are all members of the Communist Party, or they don't get to be CEOs. Under that theory, Mitch McConnell's wife, whose daddy owns the largest shipping company in China, well, and they're trying to steal battery technology from the United States, of course. China doesn't make their own technology. Never has. Communist countries never make their own technologies because there's no incentive for innovation. That's standard in any kind, because the incentive for innovation, the incentive to sit down in your basement and tinker and come up with a new product, a new idea, a new way of doing things. The incentive is, if you hit it right, you become a gazillionaire. But in China, you don't get to become a gazillionaire because China owns it all. And if you don't go along with the program, they'll just disappear you. So why put in the extra effort? Just do what you have to do to get what you can get. And that's why there's no innovation in these. They have to steal everything. And on another note, maybe it's time to start buying Bitcoin again. I don't know. Jim Cramer, there's no way Bitcoin is going to $1 million. Huh. You know, those people make a lot of money betting against Jim Cramer. I'm just saying. You know, you do you. I'm not gonna, I don't promote, I can't, I won't, I'm not. And then one last thing on money. Here's Missouri Congresswoman from the district around St. Louis, eviscerating her brain cells quicker than possible. She only got like 3. She's not the brightest bulb in the pack, as you will see here, as they start talking about taxes. Just look at the signs here. She wants $15 minimum wage. McDonald's is now paying $20 an hour. She wants a $15 minimum wage. Better revise your sign. Black Lives Matters, not one in tax for the corporation, whatever. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Those are her signs. She's just a walking, talking platitude. But listen to this conversation. Oops, wrong button. Let's try the right button this time. Somebody's got to teach me how to do this.
Percentage. So you're saying that 40, you're saying that they're paying their fair share is what you're saying?
No, I'm asking what percentage is a fair share?
Their fair share, the same, if a third of my money is going to taxes, then I think a third of their money should be going to taxes. Well, it does.
I'm trying to understand because you realize the effective tax rate on the poor is less than it is on the rich, right?
Okay, so first of all, I'm not the poor. I'm very close to that line, but I'm not the poor.
Okay, so the effective tax rate on the middle class is less than it is on the rich, correct? What fair share would you like to choose?
But she has no idea. She doesn't understand tax rates. First of all, I'm not poor. No one said you were. He's trying to point out that the lower 50% in this country don't pay any taxes. What do you mean? They take it out of my check. I take it out of a check, but you get a $10,000 check back from the IRS when you only paid in $4,000. That's not paying taxes. That's receiving welfare. If you get an earned income child tax credit, you're not paying any taxes. Sure, it comes out of your check. The truth is that the lower half don't pay any taxes. The upper middle class, the middle class get hammered, but the upper middle class gets raped. If you are a professional, non-business owner, say a nurse that makes $120,000 a year, like a head nurse or something like that in a big hospital. If you're a administrator for a school, I know here in little old Sedalia that our administrators all make six figures or damn near. If you are a work for a larger city government and get paid those, you pay 60, 70, 80% of your income to taxes. You get killed. And Cori Bush isn't going to do a doggone thing about how business owners, how corporations and all that stuff get out of paying taxes because she is one. I guarantee you she owns corporations and foundations and all stuff. That's how these politicians get away with it. That's how these politicians on $170,000 a year income become gazillionaires. You better believe they're not going to change those loopholes. They just run around saying, tax the rich, tax the rich, tax the rich. I mean, she's ridiculous. She really, understand her claim to fame, who she is. When that couple was standing out in front of their house with their guns during the BLM riots, the mostly peaceful protesting in St. Louis, and the Black Lives Matters had pushed down the gate to their private residence in their private neighborhood and stormed their yard, there was a couple of people standing there yelling at them, saying, we're going to come rape your children, we're going to come rape your wife, or we're going to kill you. You know who that was? That was Cori Bush. That's her claim to fame. So I'll tell you what kind of person she is. She's a sweetheart. Speaking of sweethearts, Elon Musk was on Joe Rogan's show, and there may be some potty words here. I don't remember, but you know, it's Joe Rogan, so you get what you get, right? But here is some of the discussion that they had.
Soros actually, you know, he is, I believe, the top contributor to the Democratic Party. The second one was Sam Bankman-Fried. Yeah. So, and Soros, I don't know. I mean, he had a very difficult upbringing, and in my opinion, he fundamentally hates humanity. That's my opinion.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, well, he's doing things that erode the fabric of civilization. You know, getting DAs elected who refuse to prosecute crime. That's part of the problem in San Francisco and LA and a bunch of other cities. So why would you do that?
Was it humanity, or is it just the United States as a whole? I mean,
he's pushing things in other countries too,
he's
not
doing
just
the
here.
same thing.
Yeah. Now, George at this point is pretty old. I mean, he's not, you know, he's basically a bit senile at this point. But I mean, he's very smart. And he's very good at arbitrage. You know, famously, he shorted the British pound. That's sort of how I think he made his first money, was shorting the pound. So he's good at spotting, basically arbitrage, like spotting value for money that other people don't see. So one of the things he noticed was that that the value for money in local races is much higher than it is in national races. So the lowest value for money is a presidential race. Then next lowest value for money is a Senate race, then a Congress, and then. But once you get to sort of city and state district attorneys, the value for money is extremely good. And Soros realized that you don't actually need to change the laws; you just need to change how they're enforced. If nobody chooses to enforce the law, or the laws are differentially enforced, it's like changing the laws.
So he's talking about George Soros. George Soros hates humanity. He's talking about how George Soros goes around and funds like these DAs across the country, like the judges that are prosecuting Trump. George Soros funds all these small campaigns, these mayoral campaigns, these city council campaigns across this country, because the laws don't matter, but to those who choose to follow them and those that choose to enforce them. And he knows that. He's trying to change this country from the bottom up, and it's working. You see the results. A battle for the soul of America. Here's a little bit more from Elon and from Joe Rogan.
You've owned X for a year now.
Oh, yeah.
Do you ever wake up in the middle of the night and have a dream that you didn't do it? And your life is infinitely easier?
Well, it's certainly a recipe for trouble, I suppose, or contention.
What was it ultimately that led you to make the decision to do it?
I mean, this is going to sound somewhat melodramatic, but I was worried about that it was having a corrosive effect on civilization. That it was just having a bad impact. I think part of it is that it's where it was located, which is downtown San Francisco. And while I think San Francisco is a beautiful city, and we should really fight hard to kind of right the ship of San Francisco. If you've walked around downtown San Francisco, right near the FK Twitter headquarters, it's a zombie apocalypse. I mean, it's rough. Have you been in that area?
Not lately. No. Yeah. I've heard.
It's crazy.
I've heard it's crazy. I've heard you really can't believe it until you actually go there.
You can't believe it until you go there. So now you have to say, well, what philosophy led to that outcome? And that philosophy was being piped to Earth. So, a philosophy that would be ordinarily quite niche and geographically constrained, so that the fallout area would be limited, was effectively given an information weapon, information technology weapon to propagate what is essentially a mind virus to the rest of Earth. And the outcome of that mind virus is very clear if you walk around the streets of downtown San Francisco. It is the end of civilization.
So Elon Musk is explaining that leftism, the cultural Marxism, is a mind virus that's destroying civilization. Now look, Is Elon Musk a good guy or a bad guy? He's a guy. Is Joe Rogan a good guy? It was Halloween. That's what's with his hair. It's Halloween. He's wearing a wig on Halloween. He's Joe Rogan. He can be crazy. He bought Twitter because Twitter was being used as a weapon against civilization. Look, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Elon Musk is a leftist. He believes in large government and that kind of stuff. But he's also a human being. And he sees what's happening. And he's chosen a side in this battle. Now, do I agree with everything Elon Musk does? No. Does Elon Musk believe in my fundamental Christianism? No, he doesn't. But that doesn't mean that Elon Musk isn't being used by God for such a time as this. Let me tell you what shows me that Elon Musk knows exactly what and why he's doing what he's doing. And that's this tweet that he put out yesterday. The real battle is between extinctionists and humanists. And once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. There are several people on our side, Elon Musk being one. Somebody was talking about Tulsi Gabbard yesterday when I played a video of her. She's WEF. Donald Trump's been over there, seeing it from the inside. Several other people who are on our side of the fight, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. They went over there, they saw what was really going on, and they realized what was going on. They didn't fall for the crap, and they started moving against it. Elon Musk, one of the richest men, if not the richest man in the world on paper, is in the fight. You may not agree with everything he does, but he's in the fight. You see, RFK Jr. is another one. He's in the fight. I don't agree with RFK Jr. on probably 90% of his policies, but he realizes that the battle is between extinctionists and humanists. By extinctionists, the WEF, the Yuval Noah Hararis, the Barack Hussein Obamas, the Hillary Clintons, believe that 6 billion people on this planet need to go away. They believe that the earth is sick and we're the disease. That's why in that article I read about Mike Johnson, they were so upset with him because he didn't believe in their climate conspiracy theories. The humanists, in the Elon Musk's mind, are the people that believe in humanity. We believe that humans have a right to live and prosper and move on and become great industrialists, great businessmen like Elon Musk, Donald Trump, or become great trash haulers. The trash guys came by my house today and picked up my trash. I'm glad they did. Ditch diggers, whatever it is you want to be. School teacher, football player. Instead of trying to just silence the world. Speaking of Joe Biden, we saw him trying to, as somebody dressed as him, trying to fall up the stairs. That was fun. Well, let's do this one first. Best customer service. Yeah. Here we go.
Ma'am, we've gone over every transaction in your account history, and you verified the accuracy of every transaction. So those overdraft fees, they apply. Transfer me to someone else. I no longer want to speak with you. You're not getting transferred again. You've already been transferred twice. I'm the supervisor, and there's nobody else that's going to give you any other information. I want to speak with someone higher than you. Oh, you want to speak to someone higher than me? Yes. Okay. In that case, if you don't mind, close your eyes and bow your head for me. What? Father God, I leave you with my customer. She's not understanding, and when you use more money than what you have in your account available for you, you're going to get charged an overdraft fee. I can no longer help her. Illuminate her path. Allow yourself to be revealed to her so that she can understand what happens when you overuse your debit card. Jesus, in your name we pray. Ma'am. Ma'am. What? No, ma'am. You and I can't. You guys talk it out. Get me to someone else.
That's our government. They can't understand. There's no more money. Well, print some more. That's the difference between the government and you. You overdraw your account and they shut you off. They overdraw their account and they just print more. It's the easy thing to do, don't you know? So, Joe Biden, we're going to protect the border, he says. The U.S. border, right? Right? The U.S. border? Well, he's protecting a border somewhere. Yeah. Maybe not. Maybe not our border. Trump's reckless threats will lead us on a path to World War III. She's got her Biden pin 2024. Hamas attacks Israel. Ukraine war casualties near 500,000. China eyes Taiwan. Yeah. Uh-huh. It's all Trump, don't you know? It's all Trump. We're going to get to more of that in a minute. Here's Whoopi Goldberg talking about the greatest president of all time. Two of them, actually.
I don't think it's just the age; it's the historic unpopularity. He's on par with Jimmy Carter, who was a one-term president.
And yet he's revered now. He's the GOAT. So he's the GOAT before he leaves.
But if I may just press on this, because we had Rachel Maddow on the show, who I think we all respect regardless of our political stripes, and she said Donald Trump could absolutely be reelected.
Yes.
We all agree that he's an existential threat to the republic. So I'm dying to understand how Democrats, despite polling that has bared this out,
because people are like me and don't believe the polls.
But even without the polling, so take the polling aside, you really think that the oldest man in history is the oldest presidential candidate in history is the best?
Careful what you say, because there are a lot of people.
You really do. You don't think there's anyone who could perform better?
I think this country has a moral compass, and they look at a twice impeached, disgraced, 4 times indicted criminal, and I think they say that guy may be old, but that guy's a criminal. There's a lot of things.
That's right. Jimmy Carter, according to Whoopi, and Joe Biden are the goats. Well, they are, because they worship the goat. But that's a different story. Take a look at the Satanic Church and their God, and you get an idea what goat really means. And Joe Biden's a criminal. Donald Trump's a criminal. Joe Biden is a criminal. Donald Trump's a criminal. He's been indicted. Just because you've been indicted doesn't make you a criminal. Only when you've been convicted. But then again, what about all the money from China? What about the money from you? I mean, look at the stuff that Joe's been doing. What do I know? Let me show you this. This is from the Halloween party at the White House. And this is Blinken, Secretary of State Blinken, as his little boy's dressed up like Zelensky and his daughter's dressed up like a Ukrainian flag. Those aren't cigarettes. Those are actually boxes of M&Ms. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. The White House celebrating all things occultic. I need a little Pastor Greg Locke over there. Just saying. And here's Joe Biden as he jokes. Now, let me remind you. No, let me just say this. Joe Biden is almost 50 years in government service. Almost as long as I've been alive, he's been a politician. Listen to what he says here.
And, you know, when you've bounced a few checks like I did, you know, when I was trying to get started, anyway, that's over.
When you bounce a few checks like I did when you started to get, when you started to get anyway, as I got to thinking about that, bounced a few checks like I did. He always worked for the government. He's always been in the Senate. Bounced a few checks. Boy, that rings a bell. Where have I heard this? Oh, Wikipedia. How many of you remember this? 1992. The White House banking scandal broke in early 1992 when it was revealed that U.S. House of Representatives allowed members to withdraw their house checking accounts. Did you know there was a house bank and house checking accounts? Without the risk of being penalized by the house bank, which was actually a clearinghouse. The scandal, also sometimes known as Rubbergate, from the expression rubber checks, bounce checks, and Watergate. But the term is misleading because house checks did not bounce, but were honored because the house bank provided overdraft protection to its account holders. And the office of the Sergeant at Arms covered the house bank with no penalties. It's sometimes called a check kiting scandal. The House banking scandal ultimately involved 450 representatives, which is all of them pretty much, most of whom did not break any laws. However, 22 members of Congress were singled out for House Ethics Committee for leaving their checking accounts overdrawn for at least 18 months out of a sample of 39 months. Now, this is the number of checks, and this is the month they were overdue. You can see most of these guys aren't there anymore, but these people were bouncing checks all over the place because they got no penalty for it. Now, you bounce a check, you'll get a penalty. If the check's big enough, you'll get a prosecution. But they were bouncing checks and there was no problem. And there was also this scandal at the same time. Many of you may not remember this scandal, but the Congressional Post Office scandal. The Congressional Post Office scandal was a discovery of corruption among various Congressional Post Office employees and members of the United States House of Representatives. Investigated in 91 to 95, accumulating in the House Ways and Means Committee, Chairman Dan Roskinkowski pleading guilty in 1996 to reduce charges of mail fraud. Initially, an investigation by the United States Capitol Police into single embezzlement charge against a single employee advanced rapidly, led to the inclusion of several other employees before top Democrats in the House of Representatives moved to shut down the whole inquiry. This is when both of these scandals happened when the Democrat Party controlled the House and the Senate for nearly 40 years without any switching back and forth with the Republicans like we're getting right now. A new investigation was started by the United States Postal Service, which eventually submitted a report to Congress. This was held by Speaker Tom Foley until the media reports. So the Democrats held that secretly until media reports of embezzlement and money laundering leaked in 1992 following public outcry. Democrat leaders of the House were pressured to refer the matter to the United States House Committee on House Administration, which is also run by Democrats, which started its own investigation. The committee broke into two parts along party lines, the Democrats issuing a report saying the matter was closed, Republicans issuing a dissenting report, including a number of unanswered questions and problems with the investigation. Republican charges were largely ignored until 1993, when Robert Rota, the congressional postmaster, pleaded guilty to criminal charges implicating Representatives Dan Roskinkowski and Joe Kohler, his then chief of staff. They were accused of conspiracy to launder post office money through stamps and postal vouchers. Roskinkowski pleaded guilty in 1996 mail fraud and was sent 18 months in prison. In 2000, just before he left office, U.S. President Bill Clinton pardoned Roskinkowski. Now, what was this? It doesn't go into what the scandal was there. The scandal was that the bank was letting them write checks for over the amount of money they had in their accounts. They would go to the post office and buy a postage stamp and write a check for $100,000, and the post office would give them $100,000 minus the stamp change. And then the house bank would cover the check. Now, this was all a House scandal. But you mean to tell me that the Democrats in the Senate didn't have anything to do with it? Really? And Joe Biden says, I bounced checks. Well, we won't talk about that. Yeah, why won't we talk about that, Joe? Did you have a Senate bank account or congressional bank account of some sort? Did you write checks to the post office from that account, Joe? I'm asking for a friend because I don't know. But it seems a little sketchy to me there, Joe. I don't know. Something tells me something ain't right. Something not right with this boy. Seems a little, You're just a conspiracy theorist. I just read for you from Wikipedia. That's a left-wing rag in itself. I mean, if you don't like what Wikipedia says, well, I don't have to tell you. So here is the White House, Kirby. Here's the White House, Kirby, when asked about terrorists by Ducey, I believe.
Is it possible that somebody who wants to commit a terrorist attack during a time of elevated threat crossed the southern border into the United States already?
I couldn't possibly answer that question, Peter. All I can do is tell you that we have remained vigilant to that potential threat.
So is there a possibility that someone could have crossed our porous southern border and now do terrorist threats? Well, we don't have any information on that. We don't know. I know nothing. Right? Seems fair. Seems fair. Marine in the Woods says, haven't pulled out the winter comforter yet. Wife's hot flashes are keeping both of us warm. Time for an OVA commercial. Well, you probably should buy your wife some. She'll probably feel better. She'll probably thank you in more ways than one. Anyways, moving on. Excuse me. Ducey goes along with a follow-up question.
People in this country making violent anti-Semitic threats, are they domestic terrorists?
I don't know that we're classifying people as domestic terrorists for that. I mean, that's really a question better left to law enforcement. I'm not aware that there's been such a characterization of that.
Are they domestic terror? Are the people going around saying that we want to kill all the Jews and all the Christians? Are they domestic terrorists? Well, no, not those. Mike Johnson wanting to be a fundamental Christian, that's a terrorist. Parents standing up at school board saying we don't want any transvestites in the classroom, that's a terrorist. Old ladies praying outside of an abortion clinic, terrorist. Men and women from around the country protesting their government because of what they felt was a unfair election. Terrorists saying that you're not going to get the pokey doke. Terrorist. But saying that from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. What does that mean? Not terrorist. Just make sure you understand. Running around screaming Agbu snack bar with a vest on with some firecrackers attached to it going, Agbu snack bar. Not terrorist. Not terrorist. Clinging to your gun and your Bible in Alabama, terrorist. So you just got to understand the difference. And I'm glad I could educate you. There was hearings yesterday where the House was asking, the Senate was asking questions, oversight to various agencies about the situation on our border and our homeland security. And here's Christopher Wray.
But as I said a few moments ago, on top of the homegrown violent extremist and domestic violent extremist threat, we also cannot and do not discount the possibility that Hamas or another foreign terrorist organization may exploit the current conflict to conduct attacks here on our own soil. We have kept our sights on Hamas and have multiple ongoing investigations into individuals affiliated with that foreign terrorist organization.
So do we have threats or do we not have threats? Come on now. Do we have threats or not have threats? He's basically saying that there's threats of terrorist activity here in the United States. Here is Mayorkas being asked about, is Hamas a threat to the United States? Watch him dodge the questions.
Can you say that Hamas, Hezbollah, or other Iran-backed terrorists are not in the U.S. currently after possibly illegally crossing our southern border?
Senator, let me assure you that anyone who poses a threat to our national security or our public safety is an enforcement priority of ours, and we use our detention capabilities to the fullest extent.
Companies to discuss content moderation?
Ranking Member Paul, you and I have discussed this before. We do not meet with social media companies for the purpose of instructing them to take down content.
You have never had any meetings with the social media companies to discuss content moderation?
What we have done in the past, Ranking Member Paul, as I shared with you previously, is we, along with other federal agencies, have met with social media companies.
I got it.
Private partnership to speak of the threats to the homeland so that those companies are alert to them.
Do you think a threat to the homeland is a discussion of vaccine efficacy?
I do not, Ranking Member Paul. And
if you'll have your staff read, and I think it'd be good for you to read also the Missouri versus Biden case, it lists time and time again discussion of constitutionally protected speech that has nothing to do with national security. So when you say you didn't meet to do with that, yes, you were meeting, you just disagree with the characterization of it. Were you meeting with social media companies to discuss content moderation? And your answer to that is no?
My answer.
That's the specific question. Did you meet with them, and were you meeting with them to discuss content on the internet?
My answer remains the same, Ranking Member Paul, that we met on a periodic basis with other federal agencies and a group of social media companies to speak with them about the threat environment that the homeland faced.
Right. And this include discussion of vaccine efficacy, mask efficacy, Hunter Biden's laptop. Are these meetings still occurring?
Ranking Member Paul, they are not. We do not participate in any such
And the reason the meetings aren't occurring is because a federal judge placed an injunction on you and the Biden administration acknowledged that they're not having the meetings. So you need at least acknowledge that the court is talking to you about this and saying what you were doing was violating the First Amendment. Director Wray, same question. Is the FBI still meeting with social media companies?
We're having some interaction with social media companies, but all of those interactions have changed fundamentally in the wake of the court's rulings.
That's sort of an acknowledgement that perhaps you weren't just talking about national security, child pornography, and human trafficking, right? You had other areas of discussion that did involve constitutionally protected speech.
No, that's not an acknowledgement of
Well,
that.
then how did you change your behavior?
Out of an abundance of caution, in order to make sure that we don't run afoul of any court ruling. I would say, by the way, of course, that the injunction has been stayed by the Supreme Court.
Did anybody from the FBI ever discuss constitutionally protected speech with social media organizations?
Not to my understanding.
Vaccine efficacy, never discussed any post concerning vaccine efficacy?
Well, certainly not, because to my understanding, as you know, the FBI was the first and for a long time the only agency in the intelligence community to assess that the COVID origin was most likely from a lab leak. So the idea that we were engaging in...
I commend you for that, but the Twitter files and other indications, as well as the Missouri versus Biden, list many cases of both DHS and FBI discussing constitutionally protected speech, vaccine efficacy, mask efficacy, people who said, my brother got the vaccine and died yesterday. And the brother actually did die, but proof of cause and effect is one thing. But taking down posts like that was part of the discussion in these meetings.
Not by the FBI. We would not have been engaging with social media companies about vaccine efficacy, to my knowledge, certainly.
Director Wray, in 2017, the Department of Justice issued subpoenas to members of the House Intelligence Committee, congressional staffers, as well as Senate Judiciary Committee staffers to turn over private information. Were you involved with that investigation, aware of it at the time?
I'm not familiar with that specific investigation.
This had to do with the leaks, I believe. We have never been told completely, but the leaks concerning the Crossfire Hurricane and the leaks concerning the conversation between Flynn and Kislyak that was wiretapped, that was classified, that somehow got out, but you're not aware of anybody from Congress being investigated?
Well, as I sit here right now, that's not something that's ringing a bell for me.
Problem with the Department of Justice issuing subpoenas to congressional staffers who are providing oversight to the very organization that's issuing the subpoenas?
Well, certainly anytime there's an investigative activity that touches upon a separate branch of government, namely the legislative branch, it has to be done extraordinarily carefully. And there are all kinds of policies that the department has in place to make sure that that's done appropriately.
Director A, did the FBI pay Twitter money to moderate content moderation?
I'm not aware of us paying money to moderate content there or anywhere else.
What was the $3 million for that the FBI gave that's been revealed in Twitter files, which has been characterized by those writing the Twitter files as payment for content moderation? Basically, they said Twitter, you know, you guys were meeting with them all the time and you had them taking down so many posts. They said, well, gosh, it's a lot of work. Why don't you pay us? And so you did. You paid them $3 million. Are you aware of the payment?
I'm not aware of that specific payment, but I can tell you that when it comes to payments, going back well over 4 decades, when we are required by federal law, when a company, like in this instance, a provider, goes through expenses to produce information, we're required to reimburse them for those expenses. And so I think that a lot of the questions about payments revolve around exactly that.
And you will repeat under oath that there was never any discussion of the FBI to take down constitutionally protected speech. You think it's all national security, child pornography, sex trafficking, no discussion of constitutionally protected speech, because this is all going to come out, and a lot of it's come out already in depositions, but you're saying there was never any discussion by any of your agents in any of these meetings of constitutionally protected speech being taken down?
To my knowledge, our agents conducted themselves in compliance with the law throughout.
Same question to Secretary Mayorkas. You're not aware of your agents ever discussing any constitutionally protected speech with any of the social media companies?
The same answer as Director Ray provided to you, Ranking Member Paul.
So there's Ron Paul basically asking the same question over and over again. That's because they have witness testimony that contradicts what they're saying. So there's a strong possibility of a perjury trap going on right there. And now that they have a Speaker of the House that might actually do something when it comes to impeachment of these guys, as opposed to McCarthy, who stood in the way in the background while giving lip service. We'll see what happens. Here is Josh Hawley and his line of questioning. And yeah.
What about people who say things like F Israel and any Jew who supports Israel? This person works for you. This is Nuja Ali, an employee of the Department of Homeland Security. That's not all she posted. This is a paraglider, a Hamas paraglider with the celebratory Free Palestine. Is this typical of people who work at DHS? This is an asylum and immigration officer who is posting these frankly pro-genocidal slogans and images on the day that Israelis are being slaughtered in their beds. What have you done about this?
4 things I'd like to say to you. Number one, your question to suggest that that is emblematic of the men and women of the Department of Homeland Security is despicable.
I'm sorry, what have you done? This person works for the Department of Homeland Security. Have you fired her?
That was one of 4 answers.
Have you fired her?
One.
Have you fired her? Don't come to this hearing room when Israel has been invaded and Jewish students are barricaded in libraries in this country and cannot be escorted out because they are threatened for their lives. You have employees who are celebrating genocide, and you are saying it's despicable for me to ask the question? Has she been fired? Has she been fired?
So that individual has been placed on administrative leave.
So she's not been fired.
Number 2, the individual was hired in 2019.
Why has she not been fired?
Number 3, I cannot speak to an ongoing personnel matter.
Why has this person not been fired? Your answer is you can't speak to it? This isn't sufficient to fire her?
I am not in a position.
She's still on your payroll as we sit here today.
I'm not in a position to speak about an ongoing personnel.
I'm not asking about that. I'm asking you how many cases she adjudicated.
My answer remains.
Did she adjudicate any cases involving Israelis seeking asylum in this country?
Same answer.
I think the American people deserve to know, has she admitted, contrary to law, individuals who should not be in this country or denied Jewish refugees whose genocide she's advocating asylum that they deserve?
Same answer.
You're not going to tell us what this person's done? You conducted a review of her cases at least?
I cannot speak to an ongoing.
You said that you will not. I can't believe that you would come to this committee knowing this. You know about this. I've written to you about it. You know all about it. And you come here unwilling to answer and suggest that it is wrong of me to ask you the question. And I think the fact that you are not willing to provide answers to this committee is absolutely atrocious.
So let me back that up just a little bit.
What about people who say things?
Because in here, we find it. He shows a text. It says, I meant to say, this is Free Palestine. And I meant to say, your cousins haunt my dreams until our last breath. Palestine will be free one day. F apartheid. Israel and any Israeli that supports this BS. F you. May Allah forgive you and spare us the crocodile tears. I sure the hell give 0 Fs. Good luck in life. She's working in a position that allows people from Palestine to enter this country. Josh Hawley was asking, has she let anybody in that maybe we need to be concerned about? We're infiltrated, ladies and gentlemen. We're infiltrated in this country. This is what's going on in the streets of major cities across this country, where Jewish people are putting up signs for the lost loved ones, and people that are still missing in Palestine.
These are everything boosters down. These are innocent civilians in Israel. Fuck you, Israel, bitch. Fuck you. These are our family members. We have family there. Fuck you, bitch. Fuck you, bitch. Fuck you. And Israel. Don't break down these boosters. Fuck you in that propaganda. Okay. Please hear me. I'm sorry, what? What are you doing? I'm taking notes off. Okay. Okay, what is wrong with you? What is your name? Don't mind your business. Mind your business. Mind your business. Mind your business. Because you're all over my
Mind
face.
your business. Lady, why don't you mind your business? Those are other people's signs.
Wrong with you?
This is happening all over the country. There was some Israeli students at, I can't remember which Ivy League school it was, that were trapped for several hours in the library as these monsters were outside threatening to harm them because they're Jews and for no other reason. Understand we're at war. Stuff happens. But does that make this right? Somebody's telling me it was Cornell University. Okay, whatever. That's good. Here is breaking. Paul Sperry, National Counterterrorism Center Director. This is the United States National Counterterrorism Center Director, Christy Abezend. Well, that sounds like, I don't know, a good American name. Testified before Senate today that Iran poses no known threat inside of America. I would not have any indications of an Iranian threat inside the United States that should be of concern. No threats, nothing to see here. Peaceful, peaceful, peaceful. Women praying in front of abortion, old ladies praying in front of abortion clinics, terrorists. Gateway Pundit reporting. Director Wray issues warning that Hamas terrorist organizations may conduct attacks here in, mind you, Hamas is bought and paid for by Iran, by the United States through Iran, may conduct attacks here in our own soil, something he missed while targeting Trump supporters. FBI Director Christopher Wray issued a dire warning on Tuesday during his threats to Homeland Senate testimony, warning that Hamas and other foreign terrorist organizations could use the ongoing turmoil in Israel as a pretext to conduct attacks here on our own soil. Ray's statement, part of a larger hearing that also involved the Department of Homeland Security, Mayorkas, and the NCTI Director, Christine Abazi, places a glaring spotlight on the escalating threat landscape in the United States. During his opening statement, aside from domestic threats, which the corrupt FBI identifies as violent extremist, domestic violent extremist, including Trump mega supporter, Christians like Mike Johnson, and parents who have vocally participated in school board meetings, Wray emphasizes that urgency of addressing the threat from foreign terrorist entities. As I said a few months ago, on top of the homegrown violent extremists, which there aren't any anywhere, a domestic violence extremist threat, except for those created by the FBI, like the ones that tried to so-called kidnap the governor of Michigan. We also cannot and do not discount the possibility that Hamas and other foreign terrorist organizations may exploit the current conflict and conduct attacks here on our own soil. We have kept our sights on Hamas and have multiple ongoing investigations into individuals affiliated with that foreign terrorist organization. So Hamas is a foreign terror organization, you say? Mostly peaceful foreign terrorist organization. According to Homeland Threat Analysis by DHS, at least 172 individuals on the terror watch list were apprehended trying to cross into the U.S. illegally in fiscal year 2023. That figure is higher than the total number of similar encounters over the previous 6 years. By the way, the Department of Homeland Security and Border Patrol have announced that this year alone, there's been 600,000 getaways. In other words, they estimate that 600,000 people have crossed the border that they didn't catch. So if they caught 172 individuals on the terror watch list, how many are in them 600,000? And you got to know that's a low estimate. Then there's this from X. This was also reported in the Gateway Pundit and somewhere else. Here it is in the Gateway Pundit. Okay, I'm going to show it to you there. Well, how do we know this guy? Gateway Pundit has vetted this guy. The story goes on to talk about what this guy said. So I just went to Twitter to see what he said. Okay. It says this post will be attacked by the left, the Marxists, the trolls, Antifa, BLM, and the intelligence community. Let me add it to the screen. I'm a 39-year intelligence analyst. I and my team's clients include the United States government, the British government, Israeli government, Saudi Arabia government, NEOM, Microsoft, Dell Computers, GE, IBM, General Motors Corporation, the Scott Spitzer Corporation, Managing Dust East India Company, Archives for UNESCO, Procter & Gamble, Raytheon, MasterCard, Walmart, Northrop Grumman, Berkshire Hathaway, General Dynamics, BAE Systems, Standard Oil, AK Mobil Oil or Exxon Mobil, Saudi Aramco et al. But what he's saying here is he's a freelance intelligence analyst who gets hired by these governments and companies to give them an intelligence assessment in this region of the world. Intelligence is never perfect. It's a messy, messy business. Rarely can I guarantee the intelligence. Many times just releasing it into the wild can stop a false flag or a genuine attack. But with a close to 100% confidence as possible, there will be multiple terrorist attacks in the U.S. Let me read that again. But with as close to possible, 100% confidence as possible, there will, capital, all will, capital, be terrorist attacks in the U.S. The attacks will come in waves for the next 14 months. Hundreds of thousands of CCP, that's Communist Chinese Party, saboteurs trained to attack the electrical grid, poison our water supply, destroy our railways, our main highway arteries. Additionally, at least 1 million, possibly 2 million terrorists are already here from Palestine, Yemen, Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, Qatar, Lebanon, Iran, Somalia, etc., etc. They are extremely well funded, and get this. The Biden administration is working with the UN, has given them debit cards that are reloaded every month. Hello. Below are links to 3 articles on Hezbollah Unit 910, a sleeper cell already in the U.S. I've talked about that before, awaiting a green light from Persia, Iran, to launch attacks. This is just one group of hundreds here to destroy America. Todd Benson led counterterrorism intelligence for Texas Department of Public Safety. Intelligence and Counterterrorism Division is a multi-agency fusion center. Read his reports. Part 1 of 3 Hezbollah Unit 19 recruitment. This is right here. These are the Hezbollah ones. Here are the pictures of people at the border. And that's not Spanish. There's the card that they're being given. That's also not Spanish. By the way, there's 6,000 more people heading up from South America right now. Understand, this guy who does this for a living, you know, when I want to get work done, I want to get carpentry work done, I go to the guy that does that for a living. I don't go to the mechanic. When I want to get mechanic work done, I go to the guy that does that for a living. I don't go to the carpenter. So when I want intelligence assessment, I'll go to the guy that does that for a living. Does that make any sense? This guy is saying with 100% certainty that there will be a terrorist attack within the United States, multiple terrorist attacks, he believes. And that's because our government is betraying us each and every day. Cloward and Piven, they want this to happen. The nefarious forces within our government that want to bring down this country want this to happen. Okay, now let's read this. This is from the dark web. Oh, but it's an interesting comment. After a few decades of living in this world, you will develop a sixth sense sensing patterns, blatant BS, and probably, especially if you happen to have a brain that was geared towards these sort of things to begin with. These frequent killings of groups of random innocent people simply aren't possible. People in the U.S., if they're actually going to arrive at a point where they're willing to kill a group of people, you know, like the shooting that happened the other day, are many thousands of times more likely to kill a group of people that they feel engaged in injustice against them or people they know or care about. If these random mass killings are legitimate, there would be simultaneously be many more thousands times more killings, bombings of politicians, CEOs, bosses in meetings, malpractice doctors, churches involved in molestation, police departments, etc. Killing of random people in schools and movie theaters and restaurants and such would be virtually non-existent in comparison. So what he's saying is, statistically, it seems impossible that killing of random people, just some madman showing up to a mall somewhere, just shooting people out of randomness, that most of the time when killings like this occur, it's because, you know, if a kid shoots up a school, and we've seen this, it's because they have a grievance with that school or people at the school. They're not random, is what he's saying. But we're seeing this rash of these people just shooting people for no reason. And he's saying that's just not possible. It's just not how the human psyche works. That if they're going to do something, they've got a grudge, and they're going to do something against people the grudge is against. Former or family members, you know, police, whatever. So he has a conclusion in mind. And that's this. But if the CIA were staging events to scare people into believing that they're not safe anywhere, and that police state expansion and support of military invasions is needed to keep them safe, well, then what we're currently seeing is exactly what you'd expect to see. So he drew it out on a piece of paper to make sure you understood it. I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm hearing voices and they're telling me to do bad things. Someone help me. And the ATF says, here, let me help you, son. The shooter that offed himself at this park in Colorado was too young in Colorado to purchase the guns that he had. The shooter in Maine, it was illegal for him to purchase the guns that he had because he was under mental scrutiny. You know, it's almost as if someone wants chaos to happen. The same people that are allowing these people don't close. You know, Speaker Mike Johnson gave a speech about closing the border, and the Democrats booed him in the House. It's almost as if they don't want to close the border. It's almost as if they don't want to protect Americans. It's almost as if they have other plans. It's almost as if they want the destruction of Reed, Cloward, and Piven. If you haven't done so, if you don't know what I'm talking about, look it up. Cloward and Piven, college professors, How to Destroy America from Within. Let's go read it. They lay it out. They say exactly what they're going to do. Here's Mr. Kirby at the White House.
Thousands of Palestinian civilians have fallen so far, including 160 of my own relatives. And I'm just wondering, how many Palestinian civilians need to be killed before the United States called for a ceasefire?
First of all, my condolences to you and your family. Are you in touch with some that are
as
still,
much as I can?
Not as much as you'd like to be, yeah. But I'm very sorry to hear that. I'm very sorry to hear that. And so I can see this is obviously personal for you. I can tell you it's personal for the president too. We don't want to see any more civilian casualties. So in terms of a ceasefire, our concern with that is that Hamas benefits to the tune of being able to refit, renew themselves, plan and execute additional attacks. And as I said yesterday, right now is not the time for a general ceasefire. It is, however, the time to consider pauses in the fighting long enough so that folks like your relatives and family members can get this incredibly needed humanitarian assistance and perhaps a way to get out if they want to get out. So we're supporting that, and we'll see what we can do. But again, my deepest condolences.
We need to pause so we can get the people out. Hamas doesn't want the people out. They build their headquarters and their factories for their bombs and their rockets under churches and schools for a reason. They have stopped the people from coming. It's not just that. It's not just them. It's not just them. The Middle East doesn't want these people. Let me say that again. The Palestinian people, which didn't exist until Israel existed, understand they were refugees. They were a group of people nobody wanted in the Middle East. They were Muslims, but they were extremists and they were crazy and they didn't want them. People didn't like them. People didn't want them in their country. Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Syria, Egypt, Lebanon, none of them would take these people in, and in fact, exported them from their countries into Israel intentionally. Egyptian Prime Minister says, country ready to sacrifice millions of lives to defend territory. Egyptian Prime Minister says his country will defend its territory as Israel intensifies ground operations and airstrikes. Amid rising pressure on Egypt to admit Palestinian refugees, the country's prime minister, I'm not going to try to say his name, said it remained committed to protecting its land and sovereignty regardless of the cost. We are prepared to sacrifice millions of lives to ensure that no one encroaches upon our territory. He told a gathering in Sinai of military leaders and tribal leaders, members of the parliament and politicians. The prime minister said Egypt would never allow any imposed situation or the settlement of regional issues at its expense. In other words, Egypt doesn't want them Palestinians coming over here and causing a ruckus, and they're willing to sacrifice millions of lives to prevent it from happening. What love and compassion for fellow Muslims, Agbu Snack Bar. Donald Trump Jr. says on that statement that they're prepared to sacrifice millions of lives. So just so we're clear, Egypt is willing to sacrifice millions of lives to not have to take Palestinian refugees. I wonder why that is. Seems pretty harsh. Unless they know something we don't. Huh. I told you, all you got to do is read history. Find out where these folks actually came from and why. They are a tool to any Palestinian watching my show, or anybody with family members that are Palestinians or something. How's it feel to be a tool? Because you are for a bigger game. Understand real history, not the propaganda. We'll get to propaganda in a minute. Speaking of propaganda, here they are showing off their tunnel systems before the war.
من هنا تبدأ الرحلة، رحلة الدخول إلى ما تحت أرض غزة. حبل يمثل الحد الفاصل بين
Who does
الحياة.
not represent the dividing line between one and this military force occupies meter by meters of tunnels. Military of the Islamic Jihad movement is 60 meters underground.
60 مترا تحت الأرض عمليا بالطبع. الجدران هي من
Walls are made of cement in addition to the arch ceilings, which gives these tunnels a lot of strength.
والمعلومة التي عرفتها ربما للمرة الأولى أن الأرضية
The floor is also generally made of cement.
الفصائل بشكل عام تتابع.
Military activities come from these places.
تؤكد السرايا أن جهوزيتها
I'm
عالية.
highly prepared to deter Israel, says this member of the unit.
هذه الأنفاق هجومية.
An attack on the tunnels that engage members from segments of society that can free the bottom part. Equivalent to the basic mission completed by infiltrating behind enemy lines.
مهمة هؤلاء الشباب الذين
Young men
هذا هي من أجل المعركة بإذن الله
the battle, God willing, the blessed and almighty, for the sake of the attack phase. Part of the numbers prepared earlier by the L Quads Brigade. This elite group problem is primary operations behind enemy lines. Offensively, this means being close to the border fence.
أن تكون قريبا من السياج الحدودي بين إسرائيل وغزة.
Israel and Gaza clashes continue
العناصر داخل هذه الأنفاق خلال المواجهة بانتظار أوامر القيادة
Orders
العليا.
from the high command have
تنخفض فعالية
reduced the
الغارات
effectiveness of the Israel raids because of
بسبب العمق الكبير
the sheer
لهذه
length of these tunnels.
نحن لم
We
ننقطع
have
عن
been
مرابط
cut
الصواريخ
off from the missiles we use to launch.
مباشرة نقوم بتعويض
We
هذه
directly
المرابط
replace these
من جديد.
fleets with a number of them again, and that's it.
أعددنا أنفسنا
Because we have
لمعركة
become accustomed to
ربما
operations
أيام
that may
طويلة
take
وربما
long
تأخذ
days
شهور.
or months. The
النظرة
first look
الأولى
reveals the
النظرة
size
الأولى
of the task.
لهذه الأنفاق تكشف حجم استثمار الفصائل فيها
The
بشريا
decision is human and material, as The Jerusalem Brigade say an important part of the battle is staying steadfast against the Israeli war machine. But any invasion, especially as a member of the targets of Israel, increases in every hour before the ceasefire. Okay, so here they are in the tunnels that they've built, and they're all over the place. Tunnels. So all that money we've been sending them for humanitarian aid went to building tunnels and arming their people. The Intercept is reporting that because of people speaking out in protest against Israel and pro-Palestine, we're seeing people being fired from their jobs, being investigated by HR over social media posts or conversations with colleagues, and having job offers rescinded. This is clear trend that people's jobs are being targeted right now. Cry me a flippin' river. When you were firing us and disparaging us and trying to destroy our businesses and trying to shame us and all the stuff that you did because we wouldn't get the pokey doke. Cry me a river. Go get another pokey doke. That's all I got to say about that one. Okay, I know I'm running out of time, but there's something I want to cover here that's important. And that's some of the propaganda that we've been getting from this war. And you got to understand that it's not accurate. It's really not accurate. The history being taught, probably in some of our elite college campuses, is not accurate. And I got some stuff that I'm going to prove that to you. Okay, here's a video. It's totally jihadi propaganda. This is how they say that the last 1948 to 2023, this is what they're teaching people, how the war of Israel occupation started. This is not how it started, ladies and gentlemen. This is not it at all. Here's what they're teaching people.
This is how Israel occupied Palestine since 1948.
And then you've got the Israeli army, which I like to refer to as one of the most...
It goes into some BS that isn't worth listening to. But did you see that little infographic? It showed how Israel over the years pushed them back and pushed them back and pushed them back. They left out a few things, like the fact that Israel didn't occupy any of those territories, the West Bank, the Gaza, none of that, until all the Arab nations around them attacked them. And then they took that land. They took the Golan Heights and occupied it. They left out the fact that they allowed the Palestinians to form their own government. They offered them twice, their own nation, freedom to govern themselves how they wanted. And they turned it down because that means no more funding from the U.S. Yeah, funny how that happens. Here is a timeline. This is from Reuters. This is from earlier this month. It's not a complete timeline, but it gives you an idea. Here's a timeline from Reuters. It talks about where we're at now, and I'm not going to read all that, but I'm going to start here. It says, August 5th, Israeli forces unilaterally withdraw from Gaza. What does unilaterally mean? That means they didn't work with nobody. They didn't negotiate. They just pulled out. Israel forces no longer occupy Gaza. They pulled out. 38 years after capturing it from whom? Egypt. So Gaza never belonged to the Palestinians. It belonged to Egypt. In the Middle East war, abandoning settlements, in other words, they pulled their people out of there that were living in their homes and leaving the enclave under control of the Palestinian Authority. January 25th, 2006, the Islamic group Hamas wins a majority of seats in the Palestinian legislative election. Israel and the U.S. cut off aid to Palestinians because Hamas refuses to renounce violence and recognize Israel. So in 2006, the people of Palestine in the Gaza Strip elect Hamas as their government. Hamas, who says that all the Jews in the world have to die, that is in their charter. June 25th, 2006, Hamas militants capture Israeli army conscript Khalid Shah, I'm not going to try to say his name. They capture his army guy in a cross-border raid from Gaza, prompting Israel airstrikes and incursions. Salat, I guess that's how I say, was finally freed more than 5 years later in a prisoner exchange. June 14, 2007, Hamas takes over Gaza in a brief civil war, ousting Fatah forces loyal to Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas, who is based in the West Bank. December 27, 2008, Israel launches 22-day military offensive in Gaza after, what does the word after mean? After, so Israel launches a 22-day military offensive in Gaza after Palestinian fire rockets at the southern Israel town of that town there. About 1,400 Palestinians and 13 Israelis were reported killed before the ceasefire agreed. 2008. 2012, November 14th, Israeli kills Hamas military chief of staff Ahmad Jabari. 8 days of Palestinian militant rocket fire and Israel airstrikes to follow. July through August 2014, the kidnap and killing of 3 Israeli teenagers by Hamas leads to a 7-week war in which more than 2,100 Palestinians reported killed in Gaza and 73 Israelites reported dead, 76 of them in the military. But the Israeli teenagers kicked it off. Palestinian protests begin at Gaza fence border with Israel. Israeli troops opened fire to keep protesters back. More than 170 Palestinians were reported killed. Boy, that sounds like that was bad. In several months of protests. Wasn't like one thing. They were shooting rubber bullets, if you go look it up. Which also prompted fighting between Hamas and Israel forces. After weeks of tension, in the Muslim fast, this is 21, the Muslim fasting month of Ramadan, hundreds of Palestinians were wounded in clashes with Israeli security forces at the Al-Aqsa compound in Jerusalem, Islam's third holiest site. Now, they started it. They started rioting. After demanding Israel withdraw security forces from the compound, Hamas unleashes a barrage of rockets from Gaza into Israel. Israel hits back with airstrikes in Gaza. Fighting goes on for 11 days, killing 250 people in Gaza and 13 in Israel. Now, this is where the peace was negotiated under the Biden administration. The peace that Hamas now admits was a facade in order to do the attack they did the other day. August 22, at least 44 people, including 15 children, were killed in 3 days of violence that began when Israel airstrikes hit a senior Islamic Jihad commander. Israel says the strikes were preemptive operation against an imminent attack by Iranian-backed militant movement, targeting commanders and arms depots. In response, Islamic Jihad fires more than 1,000 rockets towards Israel. Israel's Iron Dome air defense system prevents any serious damage or casualties. January 23, Islamic Jihad in Gaza fires 2 rockets towards Israel after Israel troops raid a refugee camp and kill 7 Palestinian gunmen and 2 civilians. The rockets set off alarms in Israel communities near the border, but caused no casualties. Israel responds with airstrikes in Gaza. October of 2023, Hamas launches the biggest attack on Israel in years from the Gaza Strip with a surprise assault combining gunmen crossing the border with a heavy barrage of rockets. Islamic Jihad says its fighters have joined the attack. Israel military said they're on a war footing, adding it has carried out strikes against Hamas in Gaza and has called up reservists. Now, this was at the time. Now they're in a full-scale ground war. So Palestine is not innocent in all of this. The Palestinian people, so-called, which didn't exist, still don't exist. It's not who they are. There's never been a Palestine to have people. New York Post is reporting that Hamas traps 1,000 Americans in Gaza as last U.S. charter plane leaves Israel. Again, doesn't it sound familiar? Roughly 1,000 Americans are stuck in Gaza without a way out as Hamas terrorists refuse to open the region's main exit route to Egypt. Secretary of State Blinken told the Senate Appropriations Committee Tuesday the figure was revealed by American top diplomat the same day the State Department operated its final evacuation charter flight out of Israel. Hamas has refused to let anyone seeking to leave its territory through the Rafah crossing, where Israel officials said had told Gazans to flee to avoid the burgeoning ground offensive. Among those caught in the middle are 400 Americans and their families, about 1,000 people in all, Blinken said, as well as 5,000 citizens from other countries. We're working with various parties to try to facilitate departure from Gaza, he said. The implement is simple. It's Hamas. So again, the Biden administration has left Americans behind, as usual. Then there's this story. Reuters. Nope, wrong one. This one. Yemen's entered Midwest fray, hardening spillovers fear. It says Yemen Houthis have weighed into Israel-Hamas war, ranging more than 1,000 miles from the seat of power in Shayna, declaring on Tuesday that they fired drones and missiles at Israel in attacks that highlighted the regional risk of conflicts. Part of the axis of resistance backed by Iran, the Houthis have rallied behind Palestinians since Hamas attacked Israel on October 7th, opening a new front for the movement that has waged war for 8 years in Saudi-led coalition in the Gulf. Now, those are Iranian forces. They really don't have much power, but they can send manpower and weapons, and they can launch a few cruise missiles. Who cares, right? No big deal. And then there's this story, nothing to worry about, I'm sure. More than 5,000 join a caravan in southern Mexico bound for the U.S. border. Roughly 5,000 people have joined a caravan in southern Mexico headed for the border of the United States. Mustering in Chiapas, the caravan is the largest such gathering this year, according to the Daily Mail. Its members have reported become fed up with the lethargic pace of Mexico's own migrant processing system and are opting to take their chances with America instead. The group includes people from Venezuela, Cuba, Haiti, and much of Central America. Caravan leader Ignacio Mejia, whatever, told Real America's Voice on Monday that the Biden administration has dropped the ball with immigration. A lot of countries that are fueling this immigration by providing a way, transporting people, to make sure that a lot of us immigrants go straight to the United States, he said. Every country has been providing them rides, just pushing them in, he said, of nations throughout which migrants cross along the way. Caravans come as U.S. Custom and Borders have reported more than 7 million migrant encounters at the southwest border since President Joe Biden took office. A massive inflow has increasingly prompted security concerns, especially on ongoing Israel-Hamas conflict, blah, blah, blah. So there's another 5,000 coming. Overjoyed. Isn't it wonderful? Would you expect anything else from this current government? I mean, who would have thunk it? Nothing going on here. As Joe Biden said, he's going to protect the border. The border is not being protected, ladies and gentlemen. We're in a world war, and we don't even know it. Sleepwalking into a world war. All I got to say is, I don't know, but I would avoid large crowds, and I would avoid places where there's vulnerability, and I would be packing heat everywhere I go if I was you. But you do you. I'm not going to tell you how to live your life. You know, I remember at my church, there was banter back and forth whether or not they should allow parishioners to be armed in the church. And I remember that one of our elders was staunchly against it. And then we had a series of shootings in Texas. You remember there was one guy that went into the church and a neighbor slaughtered a bunch of people. And the neighbor had a AR-15 and came out and tried to stop him and ended up chasing him down the road or whatever. That was in Texas. And then shortly after that was a former FBI agent who had his gun in a church in Texas, and a guy came in with a shotgun and he dropped him from across the church with one round. The guy who's the elder of the church I attend come up and grabbed me one day by the arm and said, "You packing?" I said, "No, I'm not. I didn't know. I mean, you told me I couldn't." Looked at me and said, "I think you should." You see, having these sort of things happen tends to change the hearts and minds of people one way or the other. I'm just saying, be prepared. Look, this guy was saying that there's thousands of CCP saboteurs trained to attack the electrical grid. What happens if they attack our electrical grid? What happens if your power go out? It can't be turned on for several months because the substation is destroyed and you have to get the parts from China. Poison our water supply. Do you have a source of water other than your water supply? Destroy our railways and main highway arteries. About, I don't know, a large portion of our consumer goods are transported on railways, and those that aren't transported on railways are transported on trucks, and they get from the railways to the Walmarts and grocery stores on truck. So if your main arteries and your railroads are disabled, if you got a few extra cans of beanie weenies, maybe a box of ramen sitting in your house, maybe a bag of rice, maybe some beans. Preparedness isn't your crazy conspiracy guy with a whole bunch of stuff shoved in his basement, clinging to his guns and his Bibles. It's a bag with supplies, one enough for each of your family members, emergency kits, ways to make water, ways to make fire, maybe some sort of food substance of some kind, protection of some kind, shelter of some kind, change of clothing, couple pairs of socks. That's packed and ready to go just in case. It's a couple gallons of water set aside, an old juice bottle with a couple drops of bleach in it. It's an alternative source of power or an alternative source of light of some sort. Are you prepared? What happens? What happens if you can't produce heat? Are you prepared? Things to think about. Because these people want to cause you harm and your family harm. And the only people that are able to help you and your family in a time of crisis is you. The government's not going to be there to help you. They're going to have enough to deal with. Remember, when seconds count, the government's only minutes away. The government's job is not to defend you. It's to clean up the mess afterwards. Your job is to defend you. That's what the purpose of the Second Amendment is. It's better to be prepared and don't need it than need it and not have it. When the crap hits the fan and everybody's running out to the Walmart to get the last can of Beanie Weenies is the wrong time. You need to do it right now. You need to pull out some cash right now. If you have body gold and silver, it's never going to get any better than right now. Need to buy some more lead right now. That's all I got to say about that. You do you. I'll do me. We'll be fine. You guys have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow. The creeks don't rise and the terrorists don't attack. Oh, but you know what? With all that being said, God's still in control. God's still in control. He still has all this. So have faith in God. And Smith and Wesson. You guys have a great day.